you do look back in hindsight and go, well, how did I miss it? And one common habit is we will often find out new information and then hold ourselves responsible for the new information. As if to say, at 16, why didn't I know what I might know now at 30 or at 35 or however old you are? So that's where forgiveness and recognizing you only know what you know.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any other recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and as always, it's my honor and pleasure to be with you here on another brand new episode. Just want to share, we're well into our 400 and I don't know, I know we're past 410, headed close to 420 episodes. So thank you, community, as we continue to go along this path together and grow the community. It's so special to me that I'm part of this adventure of healing that we're on together. And I want to thank FeedSpot. I just saw the other day that they've named us the #2 autoimmune show you should be listening to in 2023. So thank you so much, FeedSpot, for calling us out like that, honoring us like that. It's really wonderful. And I got my cup of tea here. Let me take a quick sip here, wet my whistle. Yep, that's good. I have green tea today. It's really good. It was a specialty my friend from the UK sent me. Got a tad bit of mint in it. It's very good. I immediately emailed her back and asked, send more. So anyway, I hope you guys are curled up with a cup of tea because I have a wonderful guest. Don't you just love it when people introduce you to people and you're like, wow, you're so cool. So that's what happened here. We're going to be talking to Dr. Charryse Johnson. She's a veteran psychotherapist and a mindfulness practitioner who works with that intersection between trauma and somatic integration and spirituality and social justice and so many other things. She is the author of the best-selling Expired Mindsets. So you can tell just by the name why I wanted her here. The subtitle is Releasing Patterns That No Longer Serve You Well. I'll go into her bio in more detail as we get to know her, but I want to bring her on so we have plenty of time together. Welcome, Dr. Charryse, to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, this is so fantastic. Now, Expired Mindsets, when I saw the title, my mind went multiple ways. Can you give us your description of what you mean by expired mindsets?
Yes, the most ideal, description in my mind is recognizing that there are seasons of life where certain beliefs and or habits, because the two are tied together, were helpful to you. They were a part of getting you through a certain part of life and survival. However, you then get into another season of life and realize that this is no longer working well, but I don't know what else to do. And so I keep trying to do the same thing and it's ineffective. So the concept of expiring a mindset is recognizing this was once helpful, but it's now holding me back. So like we do with expired food, it's time to get rid of it and bring in something fresh.
So you're telling me that my toddler-esque 2-year-old temper tantrum really isn't serving me as a grown adult?
I doubt it. I mean, you can tell me more, but that doesn't usually work as well.
Yes, I found that out a long time ago. It's interesting.
Yeah, there are still some people who are working to figure that out.
Yes, unfortunately. I hope, over time, I hope people begin to get the clue that certain mindsets no longer work. And as I started my healing journey from my autoimmune diagnosis, I found I had a lot of hidden thoughts about what health and well-being were and who was responsible for it. When I first got ill, I was like, well, where's my 2 aspirin and I'll be better in the morning?
Yeah. And I think the challenge with autoimmune challenges, and I have 2 autoimmune disorders myself, which you may not have known, is when you are going through, or I'll speak from my own experience, when I'm even going through flares or situations where you feel like I'm doing all of the right things and this isn't getting better, that's some of the most difficult time. I feel like our thoughts can be like quicksand during those moments. And those are the times that we really have to consider, how am I treating myself, and knowing that it doesn't always work out the way we'd like.
Absolutely. Now, you've intrigued me, Dr. Charryse. Can I ask
Yeah.
about your diagnosis?
You can. So one of them, there's several. I have first a genetic disorder called MTHFR. Not sure if you've ever heard of that. It is focused on the way you methylate food. So my body has a difficult time literally changing food into energy, which has also caused pernicious anemia, Hashimoto's, and then I also have celiac. So it's a constant combination of different dynamics that I've known about since my early 30s. I started having symptoms when I was 10, but that was during a season of time where autoimmune disorders weren't really acknowledged. There wasn't as much information about them. People would just try to treat the symptoms. And I was 31 before I finally got some real answers.
Now, what's fascinating about your story is a couple of things is how often I hear people say, and myself included, in hindsight, I realize now my first autoimmune flare was when I was 16.
Yeah.
And I was decades past that when I was finally diagnosed. And that's a very common thing. I am hopeful now that we're gaining enough information about the immune system that this will become just a topic that everybody is welcome to talk about. Because oftentimes when I was first diagnosed, even it wasn't that long ago, but even then, somehow, an expired mindset, I felt like I'd failed somehow.
Mm. I feel like that's a common mindset because a lot of times when I'm working with other people that have had or still are working through different autoimmune challenges, you do look back in hindsight and go, well, how did I miss it? And one common habit is we will often find out new information and then hold ourselves responsible for the new information, as if to say, at 16, why didn't I know what I might know now at 30 or at 35 or however old you are? So that's where forgiveness and recognizing you only know what you know. So how can you be present and go forward with compassion is going to be so helpful.
I love it. And I have to ask, yes, and what happens if we're not experienced with ever holding ourselves with compassion? Perhaps we have I'm trying to think of some things, a perfection mindset or I guess that's all in my mind is I think I should have known better or some things like that. How do you learn to hold yourself with compassion?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a practice and that most of us aren't familiar with the practice of compassion. It's one of those words that I do believe can roll off your tongue very easily. And where that comes from, I want to just say that first is there's so much we want to do. There's so much we want to accomplish. So a lot of times we look at what we experience and feel like this is getting in the way of me being what I want to be and accomplishing what I want to accomplish. So I'm a firm believer that while you're working your way towards compassion, work on starting with understanding. Can I work to understand how my body responds? Sometimes I understand it and it makes sense and there's a pattern to it. Other times things come unexpectedly. And for a lot of individuals who struggle with autoimmune disorders, one, if a person has an autoimmune disorder, they're twice as likely or 50% more likely to have a second one. So that can create a special combination. So that understanding piece of this is impacting me and other people can't see it may be a place that a lot of people stay for a while. And then you work your way towards, can I extend myself compassion because my body will heal better if I am as neutral as I can possibly work to become.
I like that, as neutral as I can possibly become. I know that some of your expertise is around mindfulness. Can mindfulness help us get to that place of neutrality?
I believe it can. A big premise of mindfulness is to work on the practice of non-judgment, which goes along with the perfectionism or the self-criticism. Why can't I do this? I should be better. Other people who have similar issues may be able to do other things. But what I love about the aspect of non-judgment and mindfulness, it means that I can go in and look and observe and go, what are my symptoms trying to tell me? So instead of viewing them as the villain, they are actually trying to save me in some way. They feel like my body is being attacked by some situation. So those symptoms, if we cannot judge them, then we can move to curiosity. Can I be curious about why is this happening now? What's changed? What have I incorporated? What was I doing that was helpful to me that I stopped doing so that we can then move forward with awareness? But judgment typically shuts us down, makes us feel awful, and it intensifies what we feel because we're trying to pressure ourselves to get going too fast.
Wow. A couple of questions come to mind, and I'm not sure which to ask first. So, one of the things I wanted to ask about, though, is you had mentioned get to know the feelings in our body of where we're at. And that's part of your somatic practice, I'm guessing. That's
Correct.
Can you describe what that word means for people so they understand when we say the somatic integration, what they know what we're talking about?
Of course. So soma essentially means body, and we have a somatic nervous system, which essentially anything that happens to us, whether it's something that we see, something that we experience energetically with another person, or even our thoughts about an experience or thoughts or ourselves, create different sensations in our body. We have a central nervous system that part of that somatic nervous system tracks all the way through our entire body. We often don't realize that our thoughts are very connected with this physical feeling that we have. For example, when we feel physically well, our thoughts tend to be happier and more joyful. But when we are feeling things physically that we do not enjoy or we feel like are in the way, then our thoughts may turn more negative. So being able to ask ourselves and step back out of that judgment, what is my body trying to tell me? What am I sensing? Can I kind of scan down from the top of my head and notice where things feel tense or tight or calm or smooth? To know that both exist, but that is a very helpful way of increasing awareness and acknowledging understanding.
I want to dig a little bit deeper on that, so bear with me as we run down this rabbit hole.
Of course, of course.
What is fascinating to me is, and my first entrance into this concept was years ago. I was going through a tough time in my life, and I have a dear longtime friend who's been my massage healer for a number of years, so she knows all the different joints and muscles pretty well. And I remember her saying I was having terrible trouble with my shoulder, like in my back and my shoulder and everything. She's working on it. And just out of the blue and sort of in my mind, out of context, she goes, well, if you just take that knife out of your back, you'd be fine. And what she was trying to tell me is, for whatever reason, I'd chosen to hold that particular difficult time and some of my grievances I hadn't worked through yet in my shoulder. And it was fascinating. Once somebody stated the obvious, I mean, guys, there was no literal knife in my back. It was metaphorical. But once somebody stated it, I could then think about it, meditate on it, and take time to, okay, why is that there? And how do I give myself space and grace to remove it properly?
What a wonderful massage therapist.
Yes, she is.
Help you make that connection. I often will encourage people to do something that involves body work when they are carrying a lot of stress, because when we have difficult moments, just as you described, whether that's an acute moment or something that we've dealt with over a long time, it could be grief, it could even be excitement, it could be anything. We all tend to have different parts of our body that we notice when we're overwhelmed. That's where it kind of gets locked up and stored. Mine is my hip. My family has it down. They always know when I am going too fast, not getting enough rest, doing too much, as they say, I will literally start to limp. And not because something happened, but that's just an area of my body where I hold pressure. I'll slow down, I'll reset, I'll rest, goes on right from there and no issue. But over time, when we can learn to track, we'll find out it might be our jaw. When people sometimes grind their teeth, a lot of people carry things in their shoulder and their neck or on their chest where people feel like they have a heaviness. And being able to connect that to what's happening emotionally is a wealth of information.
It always amazes me that, and I love Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's work, The Body Keeps the Score, and Dr. Stephen Porges's work around it too, because it always amazes me. A quick little story. I remember a longtime friend that I hadn't seen for probably 2 decades, and we agreed to meet. I was going to be down in their neck of the woods, and we agreed to meet for dinner. And as they walked in, my first thought was, I remember them taller. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? And as we sat and we talked, what was fascinating to me was words they used, like, I'm feeling so beaten down. And I thought, wow, this is playing out physically in front of us where anybody paying attention could see.
Yeah. I was just in a training last week with Pat Ogden, who is also a very familiar neuroscience scientist in the field of somatics. And there's some amazing new research that is even talking about posture and the connection between your mental health, which really speaks to exactly what you said. When we are carrying things a certain way, we may not notice it, but then how staying in those postures actually maintains the stress versus being able to kind of open up and really notice how things are landing on us. And we're just not taught, unfortunately, to put those pieces together. We live in a society where things are very fragmented, and we can often be focused on how do you make that pain stop? Just make it go away. What can I take? What can I do? Versus let me put this together and look at all of the areas of my life and how they integrate and how they may be kind of out of alignment, so to speak.
Wow, we're getting so deep. This is so juicy. I love this. Just a side note, because I do love Pat's work as well. What a fascinating thing to me, as some of my community knows in my other job, I'm a body language nonverbal communications expert. That's what else I do. And one of the things I talk about, it's very simple for people to do, and they'll say something, wow, I feel different very quickly. And that's keeping your chin parallel to the ground when you walk, when you talk. Because so many, especially younger people, I notice have what I call, texting neck, where it's almost as if they foreshorten their muscles and can't look up. And when you ask them, keep your chin parallel to the ground, and they'll work on it and they'll say, wow, I feel more connected. I feel more energetic. Just with a simple, maybe inch movement of your chin, it's surprising to me how fast our bodies respond.
When you talk about that, I think too of just how that creates confidence. I will sometimes do a meditation with people and I'll kind of say, and lift your chin slightly, open your heart and have your shoulders go down and back, right? Just that little moment of looking at someone face to face and saying, I am open to connection, because we have a lot of different people that have the social media neck, but we're also more lonely than we've ever been. And I do believe a part of that is we don't know how to connect. And postures is a big part of going, is that person approachable? Do they want me to say hello or to even receive a smile and to be acknowledged?
Tangential to that, as we were talking about that, I'm thinking of the past 3 years, 2 years, whatever we want to count it. When you said receive a smile and people not knowing how to interact, nothing like putting a face mask on to really almost make me feel like I'm going backwards in my social skills.
And a lot of people did, especially people who already felt like they were working really hard to be out and had a rhythm of, I'm used to this group and these are the spaces where I feel confident. There was a moment during the pandemic that I remember certain people that I was in connection with and saying, if you're not getting back out, I really encourage you to do so, because they were on that line of feeling backwards. And I've constantly heard, and there's a lot of research that's talked about people having to kind of work their way back into being able to connect with other people and to work through all of the thoughts that come from, you didn't have to say yes to anybody for 2.5 years.
You had a built-in excuse.
You did. There were no invites. You didn't have to worry about letting anybody down. And just think if you're a person who goes, I need to say no for myself because I'm not feeling well, but I don't want this person to feel bad. And now all of a sudden you have all these new invitations and you go, well, I haven't said yes in 2 years. I can't say no. Even something like that can create a lot of stress.
I'm glad you bring that up because the other side of that is when you have an autoimmune condition, it's typically an invisible illness, and it is very hard to do the boundaries between your own well-being and I guess maybe what you feel might be obligations to your social circle, your family, your friends.
It's extremely challenging and probably even in various professions, right? Because you don't always want to feel like you're making an excuse. And when things are invisible, as you say, if someone doesn't have an autoimmune disorder, it's very hard, I feel, to describe what you may be experiencing and how those symptoms can kind of jump from one thing to the next and come on very quickly, where one moment you may genuinely feel pretty good, and then there's a shift and you know what you need. And so it's like a tug of war sometimes between what you know you need and wanting to stay present. And that's where I think some of the perfectionism, some of the being hard on yourself can come in because you just want to make it and not have to pull back in order to take care of yourself.
I find that was sometimes with a guest who will come on and that, well, I'll muscle through. Well, no, let's reschedule. No sense in muscling through. But so oftentimes that's a common phrase that I hear from people with an invisible illness where somehow they think fake it till they'll make it will help them stay well or release them from their flare.
Typically it doesn't, and it may make whatever they're experiencing worse. The more we try to ignore what we're experiencing, the body will continue to escalate it to go, hey, we are trying to get your attention. So I look at it in the sense of we can either be reactive or we can be proactive. It is often a lot easier if we are initially feeling what's happening to make some adjustments and work through it than it is to wait until things are very intensified. And then there's a lot more emotion and a lot more areas that can't work through or work through as easy when you wait. So pushing through is overrated, not ideal.
Absolutely overrated. I would much rather have someone have to understand I can't tonight. It has nothing to do with you. It's just I can't tonight. How about 2 days from now or something? We check in and see how I'm doing. Then knowing that if I try to muscle through, for me, it varies with everyone, but for me, it could put me in bed the
Very
next
true.
day.
And I feel like when you do take the time and have the courage to say, not now, not today, you're going to find out a lot about the mindset of the people around you. And I believe some people don't feel comfortable having that boundary because they receive pressure. Well, why can't you just come for a little while? Well, can you take something? And then that adds to the anxiety that a lot of people feel. So you really find out who are the people in your life that are understanding, even if they don't know all of the specifics. And to me, surrounding yourself with that kind of support is a big part of health as well and well-being.
Quick question on that. I remember from years ago that I had a series of conversations. These people were well-meaning. I know they care about me, but it would be as simple as attending a party and like you, I can't have gluten. And it was like, oh, just one bite of the birthday cake. We're here to celebrate so-and-so's birthday. Just one bite. Yeah, no, that's not going to work.
That's challenging. It is so very difficult. And I think some of it with gluten, maybe, I'm going to be really nice and err on the side of what I hope is that people see so many people eliminate gluten from a diet mentality or because it's something optional. And it has become such a fad for some people that they don't really recognize. No, there are a legitimate number of individuals that shorten their life and have severe symptoms and inflammation that then triggers other issues and dynamics if they ingest, the enzymes in gluten. And that's where we have to learn to just be our own advocate. And with each individual or group of people, holding your boundary, because if you give them an inch once, then they'll continue to think, oh, but you did it that last time. Why can't you do it this time?
Very true. And one thing we have to do right now, this time, is take a quick commercial break. I'm up against the clock. I'm having such a great time here with Dr. Charryse that actually I went past the clock. So we'll be right back.
The Autoimmune Hour will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by understandingautoimmune.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon. And of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star reader's favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at ProjectForgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and you can find all of the previous episodes over at understandingautoimmune.com. And tonight we're here with Dr. Charryse Johnson, and she is the author of the wonderful book called Expired Mindsets. The subtitle's Releasing Patterns That No Longer Serve You Well. And she's also a thriver with autoimmune. One of the things I wanted to circle back on, I know we've talked about some expired mindsets, especially around health and wellness. Can you share with us one or two of the common ones, just generically, doesn't have to be about health and wellness, that you find
that people have?
Yeah.
One of the most common mindsets is, this always happens to me.
Oh, I love that one.
Yes, this always happens to me. And I love being funny with people when they do that. I'm like, always? Like, always and only you? And they're like, yes, it feels like it. From the sense of, if you have something that happens multiple times. One of the other ones that is fairly common and breaks my heart, but of course I also understand it, is, I feel like a failure, so why try?
Mm-hmm.
Those are two that are highly prevalent when it comes to not knowing how to navigate when something doesn't turn out the way that a person may like, or feeling like a failure can come from a recipe of different dynamics. But even if that one is not voiced, it can sometimes be seen in a way that a person moves through a situation or doesn't move through a situation. I failed before. Why try? I don't trust that anything will happen differently, or I don't trust that I can be consistent in this habit. And I do hear that sometimes too with people who are working to make big changes after finding out, oh, now you have an autoimmune disorder. And then they get consult on here's some lifestyle or dietary changes that would support you. Those two things can go, those two mindsets can pop up there as well.
Oh, very, very often. I know for me, what I had to start to do about, I'll say the failure thing is I started keeping a journal, and I've told my audience this before, but if you guys haven't heard it before, is I write on the right-hand side of the page and I leave the left hand blank. My longtime member, person who taught me this, he was very systematic, and he would go monthly and reread and write down what's changed on the left-hand side of the page. I'm not that systematic, but it still works. So either way.
Yeah.
And I go in and I read. What's fascinating to me is that idea of failure isn't happening as often as my mind makes it out to
Very
be.
much so. But having it on paper helps you step back and not be in it and allow you to observe it. And what's, the irony is that's part of the process that I go through in the book is at the end of each chapter, there is a section called recalibrate. And the whole concept of recalibrating means here's this mindset that I have. And as I work through it and work on understanding and compassion and why do I have these thoughts? Where does it come from? I now need to recalibrate and reframe my language around a certain situation so that I can move away from how I have been thinking or what I believe about myself. So writing things down on paper is one of the absolute best ways that you can step back and go, okay, is that always true? Is there a word there? Sometimes people have a hard time going from here's what I'm used to saying to myself, and I genuinely don't know how to change the language. So let's start with one or two words. What are one or two words that you feel comfortable exchanging so that it still sounds like something that you would say, but also feels like you're moving towards the story that you want to be walking out versus the one that you feel like you're stuck in?
Do you have an example that comes to mind so we can hear the languaging differences?
So let's say that someone is thinking about giving a speech and they're overwhelmed and they feel like, I always do a terrible job. I don't know why I was chosen. And that might be something that's constantly on their mind and creating anxiety. And then we move through and we go, okay, where can you start with a word? And they might start off going, well, I feel like I always do a terrible job. And so the importance of the I feel like is them recognizing our perception of ourselves is not always the same as another person. So can we create some space there? Then the next part of the process may be, I feel like I do a terrible job when I don't prepare. So we got rid of always and realized that it was just them. And now we're moving towards they don't know how to prepare for the speech, which makes them feel like they do a terrible job. And so they don't know why they was chosen. Long story short, if we get them to the end, it may become something like, I feel like I don't do well or I do a terrible job when I don't prepare, but I was chosen so the people around me believe in my ability. And that's a very different concept than I'm a failure. Why was I chosen? This is what I feel like because I don't prepare, but somebody believes in me. And then we focus our action on, so let's talk about how to prepare. And what does that look like?
Oh, that was my next question. When does that keyword prepare come in there?
Yes. And so then we spend our time going, here's what you can do in response. And then afterwards, we would go, okay, so here's some things that you did to prepare. you gave the speech. Now let's talk about what you noticed. Well, I noticed that I was still nervous, but I didn't feel like a failure. I knew what I wanted to say. I made it simple and I felt okay about it, which again creates the opportunity for them to consider doing it more and recognizing that they have the ability to choose how they respond to those situations.
This topic here about giving a speech is coming to mind, that word imposter syndrome. Is that similar to what we're talking about?
In some ways, yes. Imposter syndrome, the way I enjoy describing it is if we were an envelope, on the outside of the envelope are all the things that we want people to believe about who we are. But inside are things that we believe or we've been told that we wouldn't want anybody to know. And so we feel like an imposter and we're terrified people are going to find out what I really am. They think I'm capable of these things and I'm doing well here, but we often aren't taking it in. We don't believe the affirmations that they give or the nice and kind words. So we can often feel like an imposter in our own life, which is one of the key concepts that I talk about actually in Expired Mindsets, is being able to own your story and really be accepting of what makes you who you are. Because there are ways that we are somewhat showing up as imposters because we're more focused on being what other people would like us to be versus who we are in our own authentic nature.
Can you define what you mean by own your story?
We typically, as humans, are very comfortable accepting and acknowledging the things about ourselves that we either find neutral or that we like. But there can be a lot of different things in our life that have happened that we want to dismiss, that we want to forget, or we might overcompensate. Sometimes when people are achievers, yes, they love achieving, but really what they're attempting to do is to leave the world believing that I am nothing like the story that I came from. I don't want people to know that these are the situations that I grew up with, or these are the experiences that I've had in the past. So I create a persona that makes me look like I'm more confident. But then we can be masking significant anxiety. Even when it comes to autoimmune challenges, and even as simple as we were talking about with celiac, I kind of went through this a little bit with my daughter, who also has celiac. And she mentioned, Mom, I don't want people to know I have a disease. I don't want to own it. So she would go to an event, eat something as a middle school child that she knew there was consequence to, but to her, she wasn't ready to own, I need something different and I'm going to have to communicate that need and prepare for that need. So by distancing herself from that part of her story, it made her sick. It made her very emotional. It made her not want to do things with other people and feel like herself, all because here was this big thing that as a middle school child feels so different than all of your friends. You just want to go and eat the pizza. You just want to go and eat all the other things and not answer all the questions. But then by the time she eventually got to college and worked through that, she experienced, this is so much better being able to own, this is not my identity, but it's a part of who I am. And I have to let people know that so that we can spend time together in a way that all of us can leave and feel well. I know that was a really long explanation, but
no, it was beautiful. One of the things that it brought to mind is, as I was learning public speaking skills, I was told, share a mess to success story. I love that because I always thought about, okay, what mess to success story can I share? And one of the things I have found about the Autoimmune Hour and so many of the people I meet, and even in our case here, I didn't know that you were coming on and you had an autoimmune. I wanted to know more about Expired Mindsets, which is wonderful. But it's like, oh, these mess to success stories, people can connect on them. Oh, there's another piece of us that has something of interest together. I was interested in your expertise in expired mindsets and how we can break through these self-imposed places that we put ourselves in. And yet here we are connecting on a different level. And that's what I love about owning your story and being able to share that mess to success part of your life. Because then I know here on the Autoimmune Hour, we get many notes and things on social media about, wow, I feel like I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And, the autoimmune dynamic as a writer, as a speaker, even as a therapist, is something I have had to own in ways that isn't always comfortable. I tell all of my clients before we are in a therapeutic relationship, I have some significant health needs. I will always do everything that I can to be here for you and be present. And yet, there are going to be days that I wake up and I know I can't sit in front of you without you wanting to take care of me because I won't feel well or I won't look well and I won't be able to fake that. And so on those days, I may need to reach out and reschedule. And I'll ask if that is going to impact you in a way that you feel like is harmful. I want to let you know that. And, of course, I do what I can to make sure that that is not constant, but I have the absolute best individuals. But the pressure that I would feel if I tried to hide that and tried to be present and hold space for other people while suffering would be astronomical. So it's just imperative for our own well-being. And I look at it as an opportunity for me to also model for them how to acknowledge their needs and not feel like they have to apologize. And I want to say this, owning your story is not parallel to needing to convince or give an excuse to someone else for your story.
Good point.
Yeah, you can own it and know this is what you need, but you get to choose who you share with, how much you share, how much detail, so that you don't feel like, well, I can only put that boundary in place if I give them enough explanation to let them know that it was bad enough that they are forgiving that we need to reschedule, because that's a whole different dynamic of a mindset we would want to work through.
Another inspired mindset came to mind as you were sharing that story is on occasion I've run into people who take their story and make it their drama.
Oh, yes.
Expecting the world to revolve around everything it's a different type of mindset that all of a sudden this diagnosis becomes their drama.
It becomes their way to pull people in. And I see that a lot. I often work, one of my specialties is with men, women, however people identify, that deal with along the eating spectrum, so eating disorders. And this is not the case, of course, for every eating disorder, but there have definitely been times that I've been in communication with people that have said, but when I am not well, my needs are met. So they feel like the people around them are more attentive or treat them the way that they like. And it's a very sad dynamic to be in a space where that's the only way that they feel like they get their needs met or they want to get their needs met, because there can be that side of it too. And it's a very, very sad situation. But I believe that's also then why other people may feel like that's exactly why I don't want to share, is because I don't want people to feel like that. I don't want them to see it as I'm using it as an excuse not to do something. And it's important to really separate all of those different mindsets and not put yourself in that category if it's not true.
Absolutely. One of the things that I concentrate on every so often, and not just around my well-being and my wellness journey, life in general, if I find myself feeling resistant to something or maybe feeling like I want to be over dramatic about something, whatever it is, I like to stop and ask in my meditations, is there a secondary gain behind all of this that I'm not paying attention to?
Good question.
I have a friend, I love this, that she recognized it about herself. It took a while, but she recognized this about herself, that every time it came to the house needed like deep cleaning and she just despised vacuuming, her back would flare up. And I love and I honor the fact that she was able to acknowledge that out loud.
Yeah.
She found out that was a secondary
Yeah.
gain in that. But they were able to discuss it about in the family and come up with, okay, you do this and we'll do the vacuuming.
Yeah. But I'm also now super curious. You may or may not know the answer. I'm wondering, is there a story around deep cleaning and what that represented growing up? Like some kind of memory towards that, which created a somatic resistance of, I'd rather do anything other than the deep cleaning.
There probably is. I wish I knew. Next time I see her, I'll ask her.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious because that's part of what, expiring a mindset requires digging through. Well, when did this start? Have I always not wanted to deep clean? But there's so many good questions, like you said, that we can ask ourselves to go, is there something else happening if I'm having this strong response? Or I am going, hey, I could use this as an excuse not to go. What am I really avoiding? Great, great thoughts.
Well, now it has me curious. I mean, because it wasn't really about the deep cleaning, it was about the vacuuming.
Okay. Yeah.
She's like, no problem dusting or washing windows. It was about vacuuming, which leads me to believe that if it's that specific, there probably is some story behind it.
So now you're going to have to ask her, report back, tell me which episode so I can listen. Because, well, it makes me think of, there are certain children who are terrified of the vacuum. And then you have the family that either goes, we recognize that and we are willing to accommodate that, or sometimes parents can go, you're fine, get over it, not recognizing how it may dysregulate you. But it does make me very curious because anything that is that specific that we are working that hard to avoid, conscious or subconscious, there's a story. There's a story.
Now, on the subconscious part, what I find interesting and I like to do is listen to what friends say about a situation or me, because oftentimes I can't see it, but they're outside looking in and they'll say, oh, Sharon, you always do that. I do. Yeah. Or something like that happens. Listening to those offhand types of comments has been very helpful in me understanding those habits and procedures I developed from childhood that I don't really know I do. I know I have a nervous laugh and I know that it's not helpful at this age. Yet it still bubbles up every so often.
Yeah. And part of maybe owning your story is going, but it's a nervous laugh. And it's here and it's mine. And if it hasn't gone by now, the people who love me will be okay with it. And that's that place of acceptance. But yes, there are a lot of things that we do that we don't recognize. And friends, children are really great for going, why do you always? And you go, I don't. And they're like, no, yes, you do. It is definitely an interesting experiment for sure.
Definitely. Out of the mouth of babes, sometimes they ask the most pointed questions in it.
You're like, how did you notice that? Go play.
We're down to just the last 5 minutes, Dr. Charryse. I would love to have you share some final thoughts that we haven't had a chance to explore yet, and then tell everyone where we can find your awesome book, Expired Mindset.
Yes, this has been so great. I don't want it to end. Let me say that. I'm so thankful to be a thriver and part of the community for a moment. The biggest...
Oh, absolutely. Not even for a moment. You're in the gang now.
Yeah. I think just the final thought that I would love to leave everybody with is I love saying to accept your glorious imperfections and recognizing that we all carry them. Perfection is not real. It's not something that we can ascribe to, but just learn to see your imperfections kind of as part of your tapestry, as part of who you are and what makes you unique, and really thinking about what does it mean to befriend the parts of me that are hard and challenging versus resisting them. When it comes to staying connected with me, website is www.drcharryse.com, and you can find Expired Mindsets if you're interested on Amazon and also on Audible, which I narrated myself with the help of my wonderful husband, so that I could also be telling parts of my story in my voice. And I'm also on Instagram at dr.charryse_J.
Well, woohoo to the Audible thing. I did not know that. Now, Dr. Charryse, can you spell your name? Because it is a little bit different than what we might think.
It is. So C as in cat, H as in hamburger, A as in apple, R, Y as in yellow, S as in Sam, E as in egg. Charryse.
Fantastic. Thank you. We'll also have that over at understandingautoimmune.com when you go to listen to this podcast again or share it with family and friends. You'll see her spelling of her name as well. Thank you so much. This has just been so enlightening and helpful. And I find that people rarely connect what's going on in their body, symptoms, diagnoses, etc., to possibly how are you thinking about it? I think that's a critical thing that we need to explore as we continue along our healing journey, is just not healing the owies and the bumps and the bruises, but what are those ones floating around in my head that are the owies, the bumps, and the bruises that I'm choosing to ignore?
Very much so.
Everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures. Be sure and join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
For the next few minutes, we'll be providing a guided meditation. Meditation is a positive way to help reset your day and does require specific, targeted attention and focus. Please do not drive or operate machinery during this time. As we say here, drive when you drive and meditate when you meditate.
Find a nice, comfortable spot. Moving about all the little nooks and crannies to get comfortable. Shaking your fingers and wiggling your toes. Just letting it all go. Taking some nice deep breaths and extending your exhale. Let it go with a sigh. That's right. As you continue your nice deep breaths with extending your exhale, go to your favorite spot. You know the place. That's right. Take a moment to savor the colors, the smells, the textures and the patterns. Looking all around you, from side to side, up and down. Breathing deeply as you savor your favorite spot. And from this spot, ponder the word love. What are the first things that wander through your mind when you hear the word love? Notice what emotions are attached to the word love. Notice what thoughts come through as you hear the word love. Do any images of people, places, or things come to mind? Continuing to breathe deep as you ponder the word love. That's right. Taking the next few minutes, whatever time you need right now, to transform those thoughts into how do you show up in love. That's right. Begin to think about ways to extend love from here, your favorite spot, out into the real world. How can you serve as a beacon of love? How can you transform love? As you ponder this, let it seep through every part of your being so you can truly feel love. That's right. Taking these learnings that you've gathered here on transforming, being of service of, creating, and continuing to walk through with love. Bringing these learnings back with you right now to the present. Alert, alive, awake, and ready to begin again, full of love to bring out into the world. Taking some nice deep breaths, eyes wide open, and ready to start again. That's right. Welcome back.